that brought chills to me. Just reading it out loud again.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sure sometimes when you read certain things, you can visualize it. You know,
Yeah.
you can
Yeah.
visualize it in your mind. Like, what did that just? You know what I'm saying? What does that look like? You're talking about men at war.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? You're talking about men at war, and they were sitting there like, how do we beat what's been known to be basically a unstoppable force, right? And these men at war, a real man comes in and tells these other men, "Hey, cut the frowns, cut the frowns. This is an opportunity." You know, I'm sure he went a lot harder, you know, but this is an opportunity not only for us to put our names in the history books, but for us to provide a way for the generations to come that no matter what the obstacle is merely an opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I felt that, man. I think it really speaks to Ryan, who Ryan Holiday is as a person, to even include that passage into his books, because we've done a Ryan Holiday book before, and Ego is the Enemy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and just like I know, his viewpoints on life is very stoic. And ultimately, man, it was a great passage. To me, it really speaks to controlling your emotions. You know, to me, it really speaks to controlling your emotions, which is something we talk about often. You know what I'm saying? So there's no duh why this book came across both of us, and why many of his books come across both of us. But really, what kind of speaks to me when you bring up a passage like that is that it's not that things are bad, but things are bad, but I can make this good. You know,
Yeah.
ultimately, I think that kind of sums up that point. And that's really what I wanted to touch on today. A lot of it, because obviously, you know, we have two more parts to get into. But perception to me was one of the biggest. Was one of the biggest problems I had when it came to overcoming obstacles. You know what I'm saying? Because it's all about how you look at the problems. You know, but before I get deeper into that, I do just want to say, because I know you speak on like a man of war, like men being at war, you know, and a real man coming in there, where when it comes to perception, while others are excited and afraid, you remain calm and imperturbable. See things straightforwardly as they are, neither good nor bad. You know, and I think that kind of touches, because how often in life, you know, does something really small happen, you know, and you make it such a big deal. You look at it as it's the end of the world, when in reality that's just one moment in a long life. You know what I'm saying? Even if that moment, if you were in survival mode for a year, or if you were struggling with something for a year out of 40 years, that's a different perspective. You know what I'm saying? And you can kind of see that amongst some of us who are less emotional about things. When things do arise, you put your emotions to the side and handle it. You know?
Yeah. Man. Another thing, right in that like beginning section, that chapter that I was speaking of, and within the section,
Yeah.
it was conveniently called "Finding the Opportunity,"
Yeah.
and it opened with a quote from Seneca, with
Mm.
another book that quoting Seneca.
Yeah.
A good person, it says, a good person paints events with his own color and
Yeah.
turns whatever happens to his own benefit.
Mm.
That right there, man. Like, I can just tell you personally, like, I felt like when I was rereading this book and going back over this book, I'm like,
Yeah.
it was so on time for me, because it wasn't necessarily like the first time reading it, but it was like the 100th time, where it's like, it's more so a reminder of
Right.
why you are making some of the unconscious decisions that you're making, right?
Yeah.
So on a day-to-day basis now, like, I'm facing my obstacles, and I have a way more cool demeanor towards them.
Yeah.
I have a way more, like, some would even say, cold shoulder out here.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily a cold shoulder. It's just, look, man, if this ain't altering my son's life, you know what I'm saying? If you're not bothering the mother of my child, you're not bothering my mother, my father. It's like, at the end of the day, I have no reason to be pressed about this situation, or pressed about what's, in front of me. At the end of the day, I am like 100% on waking up and getting after it.
Right.
I'm 100% on, these problems have not hindered me. These problems have not put me down. These problems have not stopped me from going anywhere.
Yeah.
At
Yeah.
the end of the day, they just are an obstacle.
Facts.
They're just an obstacle, you know, and day to day life, man, like you're going to have these obstacles.
Yeah.
So, you know, what can you really say other than to just sometimes, man, nothing. Just strap them up and get back at it. Strap them up and go back at it.
Yeah.
You know, it's like it really just felt good to kind
Spoke
of
to
get
you.
back into that book, man. It really did. You know,
It spoke to me too.
kind
As
of
well.
like what Superior Man says. You know, read books that remind you who you are.
Mm.
You know, and this book definitely gave me that feeling when going back over it.
Yeah. Yeah, I must say, man, when you speak to the way of the Superior Man, I can't wait for us to retouch that one, because that one wasn't an official part one. We didn't even nearly touch half of what that book had to offer. But yeah, that's probably one of my favorite lines from that book too, as well. Read books that remind you of who you are, because it's a life philosophy. Do things that remind you of who you are. You know what I'm saying? Be around people who remind you of who you are. You know. But ultimately, man, what you really spoke to was controlling your emotions. You know, and it's kind of funny in life. People look at you like you're a cold shoulder individual, when all you really are doing is just ruling over yourself. You're just controlling your emotions, you know. It's something that really stuck out to me, and he mentioned this in the book. But if you're striving for something good or great, rule over yourself. You know, so what I did was I attached that, because a lot of people are hard headed. You know, let's just be honest. So maybe you don't want to take it from me or from D when we say control your emotions, but maybe you'll believe NASA. You know, when they sent astronauts to space, they trained them in one skill above all others: the art of not panicking. And they really put things in perspective when you're you know, hundreds of thousands of miles away from the earth. That is the only thing that matters above all else, is controlling yourself. Do not panic if something happens. You know, they said that they trained them to make sure their heart rate stayed the same. Like, they monitored their heart rate while they were in practice simulations and all of that, just to make sure their heart rate stayed the same. You know, and I just thought that was powerful, man, because I know this won't be the last time we touch controlling your emotions. I mean, that's something we've said probably at least 4 out of the last 10 episodes.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's been a time, but isn't that the one of the most important things of just being a man? Just making sure you control your emotions. That, like, if something happens that you didn't plan for, you don't panic.
If not the most important.
Yeah. No, I feel you, man. So yeah, I just feel that point. Like, just control your emotions. Yeah.
And at the end of this section, you know, you really acquire proper perception